Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 4. Hiranyakashipu terrorizes the universe. Text number 20. Evam Aishvarya Matasya Drip Tasyo Pashastra Vartina Kalamahan Vyatyaya Brahma Sapam Upeyusha Evam Aishvarya Matasya Driptasyo Chastra Vartina Kalamahan Vyatayaya Brahma Shapam Upeyusha Evam Aishvarya Matasya Driptasyo Chastra Vartina Kalamahan Vyatayaya Brahma Sarpam Upeyusha. Jenske. Evam Aishvarya Matasya Driptasya Shastra Vartina Kalamahan Vyatayaya Brahma Shapam Upeyusha. Evam, thus, Aishvarya Matasya, one who is intoxicated by opulence. Driptasya, greatly proud. Uchastra Vartina, transgressing the regular principles mentioned in the Shastras. Kala, duration of time. Mahan, a great. Vyatiyaya, past. Brahma Shapam, cursed by the exalted Brahmanas. Upeyusha, having obtained. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Hiranyakashipu thus passed a long time being very much proud of his opulences and transgressing the laws and regulations mentioned in the authoritative Shastras. He was therefore subjected to a curse by the four Kumaras who were great Brahmanas. Purport. There have been many instances in which demons, after achieving material opulences, have become extremely proud, so much so that they have transgressed the laws and regulations given in the authoritative Shastras. Hiranyakashipu acted in this way, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 16:23. Yakshastra vidim utsrija vardite kamakarata yasasudim avatnoti nasukam na param gatim. He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection or happiness nor the supreme destination. The word Shastra refers to that which controls our activities. We cannot violate or transgress the laws and regulations, principles mentioned in the Shastras. Bhagavad Gita repeatedly confirms this. Tasmat Shastram Pravanam Te Karya Vyavyastito Yatva Shastra Vidanoktam Karma Kartum Iharasi. One should understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. One should act according to the direction of the Shastra But the material energy is so powerful that as soon as one becomes materially opulent, he begins to transgress the shastric laws. As soon as one transgresses the laws of Shastra, he immediately enters onto the path of destruction. Evam Aishvarya Matasya Riptasyo Shastra Vartina Kalo Mahan Vyatiyaya Rama Shapam Upeyusha. Hiranyakashipu thus passed a long time being very much proud of his opulences and transgressing the laws and regulations mentioned in the authoritative Shastras. He was therefore subjected to a curse by the four Kumaras who were great Brahmanas. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskajade Satarane. The purpose of following the Shastras is to become liberated from Trividam Narakasyedam Dwaram Nashitam Atmanaha Kama Krodha Tata Lobas Tasmat Etam Trayam Tyajet. There are three gates leading to hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up because they lead to the degradation of the self. Eter vimukta kuntiya tamo dwara srivir nara achrat yatma shayastato yati paramgatim. Anyone who gives these up, eter vimukta kuntiya tamo dwara srivir nara. Any man who gives these up, he performs activities which are conducive for self-realization, and therefore he gradually attains the supreme destination. So Shastra is not meant simply to restrict us and frustrate us, to give us a bunch of rules and regulations to follow, so we become like robots. The idea of Shastra is to restrict our activities so that we're not under the spell of lust, anger, and greed. Now, if someone doesn't mind being under the spell of lust, anger, and greed, what to speak of one is actually anxious to become lusty, angry, and greedy, because that's what one is expected to achieve in this world. That everyone is expected to fall in love and hanker for so many things. Manifestations, people think of enthusiasm. So they can wait for 2 days on a line to get a new iPhone. They wouldn't wait 15 minutes online to get a loaf of bread for their wife, but for 2 days they'll wait to get an iPhone and think they're fortunate if they can get one. And although the iPhone maybe the cost to make it is 200 euros and they spend 1,500 euros to buy it, they think they're getting a good deal. And within a year, they're disgusted with it. They need a new one. So this is the idea. Although people don't recognize it's lust, and even if they get a new iPhone, they want another one, another one, another one, which is greed. And after a while, they get frustrated because they're promised perfection, and all they get is a big credit card debt. So these lead to the degradation of the consciousness, the living entity. In other words, it takes one further and further away from self-realization, from realizing that we're eternal. One becomes dependent. Nate vidu swargati team he Vishnu. They don't know that the actual goal of life is to attain Vishnu, Krishna. Nate vidu swargati team he Vishnu darashya ye bahir arthamanina. And therefore they have to hanker and become greedy over insignificant things. Insignificant because ultimately in our eternal life they have no significance. One may think he owns a city, but in a short period of time he may become an ant in that city. So it has no meaning, this idea that I own something. Everything's going on by Krishna's control, but I'm thinking I am the owner, but I can't even stop one blade of grass from turning one way or another. Stop turning. Ultimately speaking, it's just a conception, and everything is arranged to fulfill everyone's karma, what they deserve and what they desire. Krishna is arranging it all, not due to any one person thinking themselves to be the controller, but everyone here is simply in either imagining that one is the controller and not recognizing Krishna as the controller, or working under Krishna's direction as his instrument, the real controller. Acknowledging Krishna's control and working under his direction. That's our choice. Either we can imagine that we're controlling so many things and therefore become lusty, angry, and greedy, polluted, and forgetfulness, and lose our intelligence, or we can acknowledge Krishna as the controller and try to find out what he wants us to do and do that to please him, and therefore become free from the influence of the illusory energy. It's not extremely complicated, but the direction of what Krishna wants us to do is there in Shastra. In other words, Shastra will tell us Krishna is God, and then he'll tell us what to do. And as I said yesterday, he'll even tell us why we should do it. And then ultimately he'll tell us how to do it. He'll give us the skills necessary to do it in such a way is that it'll be pleasing to Krishna. Not only skills of expertise, of care and attention, but also how to change our consciousness so it's done as an active devotion rather than simply a task or an obligation that we have. How to change our consciousness so that it's actually devotional. And we do things, therefore, devotionally even nicer than we would have done it as an obligation or as a duty. So Shastra has all that, and as I said yesterday, also, if one reads Shastra and carries out its instructions, and gradually one will learn everything will be revealed to one, or gradually things will be revealed to one, and one will gain conviction. Conviction doesn't come simply by hearing something. Of course, by hearing something, if it makes sense, then we become convinced to do something about it. So there's a subtle type of conviction where we're convinced that we should do something, and then when we actually do it, and we realize the happy result of doing it, then we become convinced that this is the right thing to do. People may be convinced, but convinced of the wrong thing. Therefore, blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. So blind following is convinced, but you don't know why you're convinced. You think you know what to do. You think you know why you're supposed to do it. You think you're going to do it expertly. You're convinced of doing it, but it's the wrong thing to do, and therefore you'll learn from doing the wrong thing. We not only learn by doing the right thing, but we have to learn also sometimes by doing the wrong thing. Although we think we know what to do, we think why we're doing it is correct, we think we know how to do it, and we're convinced it's the right thing to do, but it's wrong. And therefore we'll get the opposite result that we were expecting. One time Prabhupada was asked by one Buddhist, well, so-called Buddhist, someone raised his hand in the class and said, "Swamiji, can you tell me about Buddhism?" And Prabhupada said, "Well, do you practice Buddhism?" And the man said, "No." He said, "Well, you practice Buddhism. Do something, just don't talk. Do something, and then we can come back and talk about Buddhism." So this armchair speculation is a waste of time. Do something. You don't accept the Vedic literature, then do something and then see what the result is. Be a little conscious. If you you don't want to accept Krishna as the Supreme, you don't want to accept Krishna's instructions in the Shastra, you just want to follow someone else who doesn't accept Krishna, then see what happens, see what the result is. So many people followed Hitler, we're going to conquer the world, and didn't work. Stalin wanted to conquer the world. America wants to conquer the world. The ants in my room want to conquer the room. But it doesn't work. They're not going to do it. None of them did it. And we're not going to do it either. So blind followers, andayatandir, upigayamanas pisha tantra urudami bara. You have to choose someone and follow them. When Prabhupada was speaking to Professor Kataski at Moscow University, and there was a discussion that went on for some time. Professor Kataski could not accept anything that Prabhupada was saying. He couldn't understand that he wasn't his body, that we're not these bodies. He could not even understand the necessity of varna and ashram, that people should act according to their natures, rather than just being forced to act in any arbitrary way, like trying to put a square block in a round hole. It just doesn't work. He couldn't be convinced of that. So Prabhupada, seeing that there's nothing I could say that could possibly convince this man of anything, said, well, actually, your philosophy and ours is exactly the same. So that got his attention, I'm sure. After disagreeing with everything that Prabhupada said. He said, actually, our philosophy comes down to this, that you have to choose a leader and you have to follow the leader. So you've chosen Lenin as your leader and you're going to follow him. And maybe you'll wind up dead somewhere and, having your body preserved too. In any case, you have to choose a leader and you have to follow it. So you're choosing Lenin as leader, and wherever Lenin went, that's where you're going to go too. And we've chosen Krishna as our leader, and we're following him. You have to choose some leader, so we've examined the evidence, and we've chosen Krishna. You've looked at the evidence and chose Lenin as your leader. So we'll see what the results are, that's all. We can't convince everyone that there's such a thing as Shastra. Matter of fact, in modern society, people don't believe in anything except whatever comes to their mind at that moment. They're completely convinced that this is real until the next thought comes in. It contradicts their last real thought. And they take that as real. So people, neither they have memory nor they have intelligence, and therefore they can be easily manipulated by so-called leaders who promise, if you follow me, I'll give you heaven. But they're blind also. They don't know what the goal of life is or how to achieve it, and therefore the followers will get the same result that they're going to get, which is not very auspicious. Now, Shastra is not supposed to be followed blindly either. Blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. So these two things. Blind following means that we don't really try to understand what it's saying. We don't try to assimilate the knowledge. We take something we like and we just follow it blindly. And absurd inquiries means we're not serious about finding out what Shastra is saying. We want to satisfy our own whims, our own curiosity or whimsical or ideas, and see if Shastra can help that. Therefore, even in ISKCON, we get absorbed in so many things that have nothing to do with our actual progress in Krishna consciousness. Either we follow fanatically that my party's right and yours is wrong. You have nothing to say because you're the devil. Actually, the devil doesn't even want to associate with you because you don't want to get bad association. Or we just, absurd inquiries, where did the jiva come from? Argue on the internet for 20 years. Shastric weapon, bombs. Here's my Shastra. Are you still alive? You look like you're wounded. Here's another one. Finish off. You're not smiling anymore. Ah, here's my Shastra. Ah! May the Shastra, may your tongue fall out in the next 2 weeks. Maybe you become blind after reading my my verse. So blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned, which one should not only hear submissively. So Krishna, Prabhupada is not writing that we shouldn't hear submissively, we should doubt everything. Is he really talking about something useful? Maybe he's just another fanatic like everyone else. It's useless. Or everything we hear, we just have doubts. So why is he sitting there? Maybe he's, he wants to control me. Maybe he's frustrated himself. He wants to make everyone else frustrated. Maybe he's a secret agent from another planet. So if we sit there with all kinds of doubts, we won't hear anything. So it's not like if someone has something valuable to say, then it's their knowledge. Knowledge is eternal. Simply we're trying to find out what that knowledge is. So even if it's coming from someone who doesn't understand it completely or has whatever reason, doesn't convey the knowledge perfectly, still we should try to hear what they have to say and see if there's something useful. Otherwise, why sit there and waste time with our mental thing, Whatever he says, I have my barrier right here. Nothing gets through the barrier. Aha, you almost got through. I blocked it. What are these people laughing about? Never mind, just keep up the block. You'll get sucked into the whole thing. He's trying to hypnotize you. Check your wallet, see if it's still there. One should hear submissively. Otherwise, what is a question of finding out that it's wrong? It may be completely wrong. Shastra may be completely wrong, but we'll never find out unless we listen to it. So it may be completely wrong. They may be completely illogical. They may be telling 180 degrees away from the truth. But unless we hear it, we'll never understand what they're saying is wrong or what's right. So this idea that as soon as it says something I don't like, as soon as someone looks a little bit like I don't like, look at that, he has a little bit of, he has a hair growing out of his ear on the left side. I can't listen to this guy. He doesn't know the truth. So as soon as one blocks, if we're going to sit there and listen, then at least we should have an open mind and according to some standard, then try to decide whether or not it's correct. It could be logic, tarka, apratishta, shrutiya, could be scripture, or it could be some authority, nasavari shir. But ultimately we have to choose some mahajan, some authority, and follow it. Now if the truth is actually there, that in the heart of a great devotee, then tarka apratishta shrutiya vibhinana savri shari yasyana vinam dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam. If someone actually knows something, then we should follow what they say. We may not like them, we may not like where they came from, whatever. But if they actually say something valuable, then we should follow it. So Shastra has something for us, then why not listen to it and see if it has something more valuable? And things derived from Shastra may have some value too. When some colonel in the army told Prabhupada that maybe it would be better if you printed hardcover books rather than these little books. Prabhupada didn't say, where is that in Shastra? Didn't immediately contradict him. He said, prove it. Where did it say that in the Bhagavad Gita? No, Prabhupada accepted it. because he understood that this was Krishna talking through this man. And Prabhupada was installing the deities, Jagannath deities, Lord Jagannath, in Amsterdam. And the devotees had no idea how to properly perform the installation. They didn't have the proper ghee, they didn't have the proper utensils, they had nothing. And it was all being filmed on camera and national television. And Prabhupada was furious. He was yelling, practically speaking. What's going, what are you doing? Get this together on national television. And one hippie came by and to Prabhupada and said, Shanti, Shanti. So Prabhupada said, okay. Now, did he become the servant of this hippie? No, he understood that Krishna is speaking to him, through him, and therefore he followed the direction. So we have to become discriminating to understand what Krishna is saying, what is real, what is unreal, and try to understand it. Ultimately, if we become convinced that Shastra is real, then we'll be able to give up lust, anger, and greed, because that's what it's talking about, and perform the activities of pure devotional service, which are favorable for self-realization. Shastra is not just meant to restrict us, it's meant to liberate us from these unwanted material desires. And then from there, Shastra gives us activities which are positive also, which will absorb our mind in spiritual desires. So that we have to see that's what Shastra is given to us. Whether it works or not, we have to find out for ourselves. Just like anything else, we want to find out if it works, we have to test it. If someone sends you a present in the mail, a new computer, you don't just throw it away, it probably doesn't work. You probably turn it on, see if it works or not. And if it doesn't turn on, then you go back and where it came from and ask them to fix it. But you just don't reject it. Oh, it couldn't work. It's a blue color. Things that are red only work. So we have to be an open mind, even for Shastra. And then try to see if there's something I can understand, something that applies to my life, and apply it and see if it works. See if by reading it we get some understanding, which is a symptom it might work, and if we apply it in our lives, see what the result is, see if it actually works. Because Shastra is not meant for just knowledge, accumulation of ideas, it's meant for experience, accumulation of experience, Krishna consciousness. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna. I have maybe several questions. One question is, why are we often so attached to insignificant points that are not ultimately so important? Either they could have some bearing on Shastra and spiritual life, or they could be something connected to. Sometimes we will have a lot of tension even on political grounds between devotees. And how can one rise above these tensions?
Well, everyone came here to be victorious. If you can't beat someone on a big platform, beat them on a little one. But victorious, the mood of victory. I won, all right. He knocked me out, but I won this little round. I wasn't completely a failure. So if you beat someone on a small point, then you also get satisfaction. I won, victory. Put it on the internet, Facebook. And how to rise above it? We have to think about what Krishna wants. But he actually wants me to do what he thinks is important. See from Krishna's perspective what's important, what's not important. See, or Krishna's representatives, what they want me to do, what they said was important. And then try to accept that, see from their perspective what's important, what's the overall viewpoint, and what's the broad perspective, what's actually important in that, and what's the priority. What should I actually prioritize? Which is more important than something else? Everything may have importance, but what's the most important? Yes.
There's also a verse in the Bhagavatam which says that some cross the ocean of lust only to drown in a puddle of anger. So also you gave this story of Vishwamitra, that his second fall down was anger. Why is it that anger seems more difficult to get rid of than lust?
Well, I don't know how easy either one of them is to get rid of. We probably think lust is good and anger is bad. And therefore, when we're lusty, we think sometimes, well, this is not so bad. When we get angry, well, this is embarrassing. But whether anger is more difficult than lust, I don't know. It may be more concentrated. For instance, we find that Shishupal out of envy and Kamsa out of anger, I guess it was Kamsa, they attain liberation. So it's Narada Muni glorifies as an intense emotion. After all, it's rising after intensification of lust, greed. Greed is like solidified lust, and it shines in anger, like gold. So it's intensified greed, the frustration of our greed not being satisfied. So it's an intensification of the previous. Just like we're walking around here right now. We're not even aware if we're lusty or angry or greedy, but we're in a delusion. The flavor of delusion just lingers way after our lust and anger and greed. We just walk around in an ocean of delusion. And forgetfulness, we have no idea who we actually are, what our real identity is. As far as intelligence, we don't even know what real spiritual intelligence is yet. We have just some idea. The expertise of devotional service, doing everything perfectly out of love for Krishna, satisfying everyone by complete absorption in Krishna consciousness, which is real spiritual intelligence. So we're just meddling around in a little bit of lust, a little bit of anger, a little greed. But we have a lot of delusion we're absorbed in. Yes.
What would you suggest as a method for people to rise above anger? Especially nowadays, I understand many people have had trouble being locked down in close quarters. So either full-blown anger or just irritation. So
give up lust. You can't give up lust, you can't give up greed or anger. It's not possible. And if you get angry, think of Lord Nrsingadev. If you want to tear something apart, tear it apart in your mind, tear apart Hiranyakashipu, which is lust and greed. Then you'll get rid of the anger. Yes?
Would you agree that depression could be sometimes understood as frustrated anger? When we are angry but helpless, then it turns into depression.
Yeah, of course, it can be that. Depression is the mode of ignorance. Anger is the mode of ignorance also. They're first cousins. They go along with each other. They're almost married. The opposite of enthusiasm is the mode of ignorance, real enthusiasm. So, the opposite of enthusiasm is depression. Enthusiasm is born in the mode of pure goodness, and depression is born in the mode of ignorance. Born of hankering and lamenting. And the hankering will come, in the mode of passion will come lamentation, and depression in the mode of ignorance. All right, thank you very much. Grandaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.